In this demo, we'll go over some basic setup after you have installed AhsayCBS. After you have installed AhsayCBS, we'll log into your CBS admin console. We will then check on the backup license page. We will input your host name, your FQDN, fully qualified domain name. We will configure SMTP settings. We will then disable the redirector if you're not planning to use it. Redirector is RDR for short. Then we will disable backup set data migration. We will change the user home path. Then we will set up the free trial option preferences. Afterwards, we will check the Java Heap max and adjust accordingly to your server's RAM size. And then we will enable auto save. Before we log in, you want to make sure that the Ahsay Cloud Backup Suite Windows service has started and is running. So after you install AhsayCBS, you might not be familiar with what you might need to do to set up your CBS server for basic functionality. So we will first start off from your local server's console. We would input the local host IP address 127.0.0.1. If you will be connecting to your CBS server from another server, instead of using 127.0.1, you can use your server's assigned IP address. From my CBS server's Windows console, I'm using the Internet Explorer to connect to http://127.0.0.1. And in case you don't know where 127.0.0.1 is from, it's the loopback address. As you can see on the screen, IIS has loaded. Now, AhsayCBS does not use IIS. AhsayCBS bundles Tomcat web server. The problem that we are now experiencing is that we have a port conflict. IIS is using port 80 for HTTP, and likely HTTPS is using 443. Now, AhsayCBS, when I installed it, I'm using the default port settings, 80 as HTTP and port 443 for HTTPS. If this is something you're experiencing, you may want to consult with your Windows administrator to determine if the server that you installed CBS on is using IIS for any other purposes. So I'll quickly go over how we can change IIS port so that it is not using 80 or 443. Go into Windows Start and search for IIS Manager. Then you want to branch out, go down to Default Website. Then on the far right side of the screen under Actions, Edit Site, click on Bindings. So as you can see, IIS HTTP is binded to port 80. We'll just change that to be port 8080. Click OK and then save. And now we have to restart the website service. So under Manage Website, stop and then start the service. Now that IIS is taken care of, we also have to restart the CBS service. And now we'll load the loopback address again, http://127.0.0.1. And now we're presented with the login page. Now we'll log in using the login with the default credentials. The default credentials are outlined in the AhsayCBS Administrator's Guide. As you can see, this is the CBS main menu for version 8. We'll now check on the license page. Seeing that this is a fresh installation of AhsayCBS version 8, we will need to press Update to activate the evaluation license. So under System Settings in the orange area, click on License. Once the page loads, you'll see two tabs, Backup and Redirector. Underneath the Backup tab, we see an Evaluation Only, License Name, and Paired License Key. And this is the Backup tab. Now if I click on the Redirector tab, the Redirector has a separate license. The Redirector also has an evaluation period. And if you have a valid Redirector key, you can input that here. Once activated, you will begin a 60-day evaluation of CBS. If you have a production license key, you can go ahead and input that at this time, both license name and license key, and then click on Update. And then we go down a little bit. Under Update License, there's a button for Update. Once you click on that, your evaluation license will be activated. You can also see that the product version of this CBS is 8.3.0.30. Moving along, you'll need to input your host name within the CBS configuration. Ideally, this is your FQDN, fully qualified domain name. Under System Settings, Basic. Underneath the General tab, you see the word host, and then host name, and then the blank field box. You must input your FQDN here. Failing to input a value, you will get a warning that the host name cannot be empty. The other settings on this page are connectors if you need to change the port number, such as 80 or 443, to another port number, or if you want to add another connector port, you can do so on this page, as well as input your SSL certificate. Remember to click on the green Save button on the lower right. Another basic setting that you should configure is your SMTP settings. This will allow you to receive email notification for alerts, as well as your backup users can receive emailed reports. So underneath System Settings Basic again, underneath the Email tab, you have the SMTP server as well as Administrative Contact. Starting off with Administrative Contact, we will input our name and email address for the administrator, and then click on the checkmark icon for OK on the lower right-hand corner. You also have report settings that you can tweak if you want to set those values. Now, setting the SMTP server, you want to add your host name, which could be mail.domain.com or whatever, or by IP address. You want to give it the SMTP port number. By default, it's usually 25, but if you're using SSL, it might be a different port. Now, if your SMTP server requires credentials, you want to input that under login name and password. And if you need to use secure protocol, make sure you mark that and then select the correct protocol, SMTPS or Start TLS. And below that is report sender. So you want to give it the name as well as the report sender's email address. After that's all done, you have to click on the button for test. Because my CBS server is on a closed lab network, I don't have access to the SMTP, so my test has failed. But in your production environment, you should make sure that this test is successful and that you are able to save your SMTP server settings. Next, we will disable Redirector if we are not planning to use it. Now, if this is your only CBS environment, and more than likely you won't be ready to use Redirector yet. So underneath the redirection, the purple icon, we'll click on Hosting a Redirector, and then we'll disable the toggle. You'll also want to disable this if this CBS server will only be a backup server. Next, we will disable backup set data migration. By default, when you install CBS, the backup set data migration will be enabled. Now, if you have not upgraded from a v6 backup server environment, there is no need for this setting to be enabled. The purpose of backup set data migration is for converting legacy v6 backup sets to the new CBS block data format. To find the backup set data migration page, click on Backup Restore Basic, which is the blue tile, and then click on the Backup Data Migration tab, the third one, and then go ahead and click on the toggle button to turn it off, and then click on the green button to save on the lower right. Next, we'll look into changing the user home path, as well as setting up the free trial options preferences. A standard new installation of AhsayCBS will include a user home path that is already configured. The user home folder is inside your CBS installation path. On Windows, this is C program files /AhsayCBS/user. From the CBS main menu, you want to click on the blue basic button and then click on the user home tab. Now, as you can see, highlighted is the default user home directory. If you're using the CBS installation as a testing environment, you can go ahead and leave this alone. But if you're setting this up for your production environment, it is recommended not to use the C drive as a user home path, mainly because the more users you have backing up to your CBS server, the C drive will become full. It is recommended in a production environment, your user home directories are on a different disk volume. You're not limited to only one user home directory. You can create as many user home directories as you want, up to your limitation of your OS. To create another user home directory, click on the plus sign and then input the home directory path. And now to modify the free trial options, on the same menu, click on the free trial options tab. Here you can enable or disable the free trial registration. If free trial registration is enabled, any potential customers may download your OBM software and self-register an account. If you don't want any potential customers to self-register, disable free trial registration. Now, with free trial registration enabled, you can set the quota, you can set add-on modules that the free trial user may experience. If there are modules that you will not offer from a sales standpoint, you might not want to enable those modules. And let's say, for example, you already applied your production license key to your CBS server. However, you notice that there are new add-on modules that you have not yet purchased, but you would like to try them. In order to experience that, you can set up a trial user account with those specific add-on modules enabled. Trial users do not consume module licenses. Therefore, if let's say you don't have any of the NAS modules, but you want to try it out, create a trial account with those NAS modules enabled. The same goes for Exchange licenses, Office 365 licenses, and so forth. With a trial account, you can experience those add-on modules before you have to buy a license for it. Now, if you switch that trial account to become a paid, you must already have applied those modules into your production license key. If you don't have those modules, you'll need to purchase them. Now, scrolling down, there are additional settings for trial users. you can automatically suspend users after a certain amount of days, as well as automatically deleting users after an extended period. Trial accounts have a maximum of 90-day experience. You can remove users after they have registered up to 100 days later. Now remember, this only applies to users with a user type of trial. If they are paid, these settings do not apply to them. Remember, after you made your changes, to click on the green icon on the bottom right-hand corner to save your changes. Next, we'll check on the Java Heap max and adjust accordingly. Now, the Java Heap max is to tune your CBS server so that you don't run out of memory. If you do run out of memory, you might experience a out of Java Heap error message. Now, to set your Java Heap max, you do not want to set a value greater than the amount of RAM you have installed on your machine. In addition, the amount of RAM you have on your machine needs to be also used by your operating system. So, your Java Heap max by recommendation, should be no more than 2/3 of the amount of total RAM on your machine, leaving the 1/3 for your operating system. However, if your operating system is heavy on RAM usage, you may need to lower the Java Heap max accordingly. As you can see on the screen, we've jumped into the monitoring, dashboard, memory view. Here we can look at the memory usage of your CBS server, looking at the current size column and the maximum size column, as well as the graph. The memory usage that you see through the CBS user interface will be different than the memory usage you see from your operating system. Your operating system's memory usage will be including the CBS server service running. The memory usage you see from your CBS user interface will be the memory used within CBS itself. On Windows, you're looking for the CBS SVC x64.exe process. As you can see on my demo machine, this Windows server only has 2 gigs of RAM. My Java Heap max is also set for 2 gigs. By default, a CBS installation will set a Java Heap max as 2048M, which is 2 gigs. To set the Java Heap max, go into System Settings Advanced. Click on the Runtime Options tab, the very last one. And then on the first line, maximum Java Heap size to be used, 2048 MB is the default value from CBS when you do a new installation. You can adjust this. You can increase it or decrease it. It is recommended that 2048 be your minimum value. But if you have, let's say, 8 gigs of RAM, you can set this as 4096. If you have 16 gigs of RAM, you can set this as 8192M, and so forth. If you're just testing, you can set this as 1536 if your VM only has 2 gigs of RAM. Anytime you change the Java Heap values and save the settings, those settings will not be in effect until you restart your CBS service. Once you have purchased your license, you will want to enable your autosave. Autosave does not work if you are still running an evaluation. Go into System Settings, Advanced, the orange menu, and then click on the Autosave tab, the very first one, and then make sure that the Use Autosave is toggled on. What Autosave does is that every 6 a.m. there's a routine that runs on your CBS server where it will back up your configuration settings to the Ahsay license server. This allows you to have a recovery point in case your CBS crashes or you lose your configuration and you need to restore it. Autosave is a value-added benefit when you have valid maintenance. So if you don't renew your maintenance, autosave will not work for you. This concludes this demo video. So, now that you've done all these setting changes, you are now ready to accept new users. Congratulations.